You are now tuned into Flippin the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome all to episode 157 of Flippin the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron alongside Eric Reese, Morgan Burkett, and Zach, the one and only Zach Chavalella.
How are you kissing my ass now after you said you don't need my opinion before the pod?
Right when he said the one and only, I was like, oh, he's going to hype it up and mess it up, and he didn't. So that was awesome.
Hey,
that ruled.
I still got the last name. Right, even with all that.
You got that at least, yeah.
There we go. Improvising at best. And Morgan just disappeared. But he'll be back in a couple seconds. He came back off a 3-week hiatus where he traveled, I think, to England and Barcelona, things of that sort. But yeah, speaking of traveling, I mean, the New York Giants are traveling down to Philly. How are we feeling about that? I mean, first and foremost, can we all just say that we declared on the podcast multiple times throughout multiple weeks that the Minnesota Vikings are frauds? I think that was a trend on this podcast.
It was.
I mean, since week 2 when we picked the Vikings to beat the Eagles, I think we've basically been on team Viking fraud.
We used too many people. I wasn't on that episode. There was bad DMs because of that episode. Because
there were. Yeah, there were. But as soon as the Eagles played the Vikings, and we just saw kind of how easily, like, it's crazy with Justin Jefferson on that team, but how easily they were shut down. And
Dory Jackson shutting down Justin Jefferson, holding him to only 37 yards against him. Like, bro.
I mean, there's only so many times you can pull out a miraculous win. And, like, I saw a stat, again, it was like week 12 or something like that. But something like if the Vikings had lost the one-score games that they were part of that they won, they would have been 1-11. And, like, it's just not sustainable. And, there is something to be said for having a skill or a penchant for coming back in late in games, but again, like, you just can't wait for that. You can't hope for that, and that's kind of the way Vikings were winning games this year. And I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to talk too much because I think that saying that the Vikings are pretenders discredits a lot of what the Giants actually do. Like they're
oh yeah, well,
they're a team.
I can't give them credit though. You guys know this. If I give them credit, then it comes off. You guys start donating a Giants jersey under my name and stuff like that.
Yeah, 100%. And so, without Brian being a homer, like the Vikings just they're very lucky throughout the season, and then their luck kind of ran out. But the Giants are no pushover, and the Eagles had their way with them during the season. But there's a playoffs, man, and it's completely different.
How impressed were you guys with Daniel Jones? Why I feel like his name just doesn't sound right. Daniel Jones, right?
Yeah, Daniel Jones. That's the right name. That's the guy.
Listen, like he was slinging. I'm not gonna lie, he was definitely slinging against a Vikings defense that I feel like hasn't been up there throughout the whole season. But he did his thing. I think he threw over 300 yards, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you hold Saquon Barkley to under 60 yards, you assume that you win that game, right? Yeah. But the Vikings defense is it's not good. It hasn't been good all year, and it was really not good during that game.
What's the word or phrase that comes to mind when you think of Daniel Jones?
Plain.
Yeah, basic.
I think of the opposite of that. I think of like more athletic than you would think. Something like a phrase like
he
that.
Actually is a lot more athletic.
Yeah, he is.
But Daniel Jones is like. He's like the bobblehead that you just got to collect it because he's part of the collection. Like he's not the feature like collectible. He's just a part of the collection. But he did stand out against the Vikings. You got to give him credit that the Giants ran a pretty identical offense that the Eagles run. I mean, they were really using Jones on his legs a lot. Saquon's a freaking monster. I love seeing him run. It was great to see him in playoff action. But they do come to Philly, and they're coming to the link.
Yep.
against the top seed Eagles, against a fresh Jalen Hurts, against a fresh Dallas Goedert, against a Lane Johnson who doesn't give a damn, who's actually playing with a freaking tear in his abdominal section.
Mhm.
Like, how hyped are we about this damn game? Like, this is like the most, I don't know, like the most exciting playoff game we've had since the 2017 season.
Yeah.
What sense of urgency does everybody have like off the jump? Because I'm very confident in the Eagles. Like I'm not
no, yeah, I'm super hyped, super confident. I mean,
right.
I think the only person more hyped and confident than any of us here would be Boston Scott.
Yeah.
You know, it's just it's great. Feel like you cannot like take a team lightly. Do not get me wrong, especially during the playoffs.
Mhm.
However, there is this like almost like factual basis of like on paper, this is a much better team than the New York Giants. The areas in which the Eagles succeed, bear with me, I've come down with a little something as of recent, but the areas within where the Eagles succeed bode well against the Giants as well. Now, obviously, the last game that we saw, the Giants and the Eagles meet up. You know, everyone talks about how close that game was and everything like that. Well, let's not forget about the fact that the Eagles dominated the first three quarters. Okay, specifically the first half. On top of that, you're talking about an Eagles team that was missing various parts, an Eagles team that did not run the offense the way that they normally would. And you know, you're talking about a team that like they needed the win, don't get me wrong, but they didn't need the win. It's not like they wouldn't have made the playoffs if they didn't get that win. They wanted the bye week, obviously, especially with the injuries that they have, but this was not the Eagles' best effort against the Giants. So for the Giants fans that have this, you know, oh well, they barely beat Davis Webb energy, you know, for against Philadelphia, it's like, okay, well, I think that you're going to be looking at something a lot closer to the game back in December than the game at the end of the season. So I think it's a high level of confidence going in. Just with that underlying, you can never truly underestimate your opponent when you go into it.
I completely agree with that, and I think another thing I kind of want to take away from that last game is you really got to tip your hats off to Nick Sirianni, because they played the most vanilla offense that they can possibly play against a team that nobody thought would be actually facing the Eagles in the divisional round outside of Nick Sirianni. Like, he was preparing this team to make sure that nothing was given, everything's earned from on the Giants' part. Like, he's putting, in my opinion, he's putting the guys in the best position to win for Philadelphia, and just protecting Jalen Hurts in that game as well. But I'm ecstatic to watch playoff Hurts, because you got to think this guy's pissed off after what happened last year. I mean, getting humiliated like that against the Bucks, just to come back around, lead your team to the top of the NFC, and now you're hosting a playoff game in Philadelphia, which I've been saying all year. You're not coming to Philly and beating this team. It's not happening. Jalen Hurts provides a different kind of energy that we have not seen in Philadelphia in a long time. Like, the guy literally not only holds the team accountable, but he's holding the city accountable. Like, that's literally what you feel when you're watching Eagles football nowadays. Like, you feel a part of the game, and Hurts is just energy, just pure energy, and it's gonna be a ruckus in Philly. I can't wait. I'm stoked.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said it, Brian. I think this is a game where really it's more about the Eagles beating themselves if anything does go wrong. Like, I don't want to discredit the Giants, but you know, I think that they play mistake-free football. They play good playoff football, don't get me wrong, but you know, like Zach said, on paper, it's just a better team. So what I really want to see is some trends. And again, you never want to look past an opponent, but there's a couple things that the Eagles really have to get going and consistently in the playoffs. And number one is the run game. You got to tote the rock. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean you can't win this game without running the football. But, you know, if you're looking forward to the other opponents in the playoffs, like you just can't win playoff games and win them consistently without a solid running game. And that can be Jalen Hurts, that can be Miles Sanders, that can be Boston Scott, whoever it is. But I really hope that Shane Steichen doesn't overlook the fact that this is one of those games where you have to kickstart that offense. Like, granted, I think everything you guys are saying about the last game was correct, but you know, it has to be a different gear now, right? Like, this is the playoffs, and And as much as, the Eagles won that game, and, again, it was very vanilla offense, is we started to see that kind of trending for the last couple of weeks without Jalen Hurts. Obviously, you're going to dumb down the offense. And then last week, before last week, you're going to see a dumb down offense. But now, everything's got to mesh and everything's got to go. And so, if the Eagles kind of stall early on and don't get the run game going and then have to rely on Jalen Hurts, again, you bet on him. This is an MVP candidate, rightfully so. But it'd be nice to see them kind of, shake the dust off early. And I feel like that's if you start going early with the link rocking, there's no contest, right? But if they start stalling early and you let this, it's a good defense, it's an underrated defense. They have some really good talent, especially in that front kind of seven is they'll make it difficult for you. Then it's okay, now it's a game, and it's a divisional matchup. They know each other really well. So I'm just hoping that, they run the football early. And again, the Giants play mistake-free football, so you can't count on, being able to come back from interceptions and fumbles. So the Eagles have to play mistake-free football as well. So as much as I think that this is, one of those games where, on paper should be a blowout. The Giants, they'll make you pay if you overlook them.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And what you said about running the ball is obviously spot on. I mean, when you're looking at the Giants, and I don't think it's any well-kept secret, their struggles against the run. They gave up the fourth most yards per game of any team in the NFL to running backs rushing. So that's an obvious major weakness for them. It's also an obvious area of wealth, I guess I would say, for the Eagles, because not only do we have Miles Sanders, not only is there Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, who that's a pretty solid three-headed monster in their own right, but on top of that, there's Jalen Hurts. Now you can argue, how much will they rush Hurts? How much can they rush Hurts responsibly? But when you just look at the way that the team's built, they can attack you on so many different levels that if they take advantage of what the Giants give them, which historically this season has been the running game, that's going to hopefully open up the entire rest of the field. So I think that you're exactly right. It has to be the point of emphasis for Philadelphia is, really just punching in the face early on with the run game. And then from there on out, just making sure that you are established as an offense.
And even when the offense was quote unquote vanilla because they were, trying to protect Hurts, the running game was still able to get some chunk yardage on first downs and even second downs, early in the series. So that's to everything what you guys were saying. Please just get the run going early. It doesn't really matter who it is. Just get the team running the ball successfully early.
Yeah, I mean, and when you're running the ball, you also, the key thing as well, Eagles have struggled when other teams are actually leading in time of possession, which has been a key ingredient this season. Own it. You're home. You are in your comfort zone. You have your star quarterback back. You have Lane Johnson back. You have a fresh Miles Sanders. Own it. Run the ball. Milk the clock. Wear them down. You don't have to get cute. You don't have to get pretty with it. Just do what you've done best from last year to now. Run the ball. And if Hurts needs to, get flashy and do some play action, then you have a blanket with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and now Dallas Goedert. And just to put this out there as a question to you guys, going into this game, are you feeling Philly versus Atlanta feels in 2017, or do you feel Philly versus Minnesota?
In the sense that I thought Atlanta was actually going to be the tougher game, I'm feeling Philly versus Minnesota. I'm just very confident about this, and when against Minnesota, I remember thinking and looking at, I guess, Case Keenum at the time. God, if there was ever lose face during a national anthem when they show a quarterback, it was Case Keenum in that game, and that's how confident I was. I just added to it, I knew that was going to be a blowout, and it was. I don't think this is going to be a blowout, though, for sure.
Do you want my opinion on this? I know there's certain things that you just want their opinion on. So I don't know if you want mine.
I introduced you as the one and only, Chavalella, the one and only Chavo Guerrero.
Yeah, the one and only Chavo Guerrero. I think if I had to pick between the two, the cop out is that I think it's somewhere in the middle. But if I had to lean one direction, I do think there are a little bit more shades of that Minnesota game involved here, just because looking at what this team is, Philadelphia, at their best, and they're not at their best, but they're pretty close to it. I mean, I think so much depends on what Lane Johnson actually looks like when he returns, because that is one painful injury. I mean, that is major props to him for actually playing through this, and it's not something that's going to be easy, and he's not going to be 100% Lane Johnson. Probably still an upgrade over Jack Driscoll, I would imagine, but not 100% Lane Johnson. So it'll be interesting to see what that exactly looks like. But I do think it is that more, especially if they do get on him early, like Morgan said, that they kind of have to. I think it is more that kind of energy.
If Lane Johnson is this injured and he's still an upgrade over Jack Driscoll, how much of Lane Johnson has to be gone before Jack Driscoll's an upgrade?
That's an unfair question.
98%.
You're talking about the best tackle in the NFL versus a young guy who's still figuring some stuff out. I mean, there's a stark difference between the two, and I think Jack would be very quick to admit that. But
99.9%.
Full limb, I think. Yeah.
Dang. Missing an arm and a leg. Okay.
It's
missing his soul.
To your question, Ron, I think for me, I'm gonna kind of go the opposite direction. I think this is gonna be one of those Atlanta games. I think it's gonna be close, for a couple reasons. I think that unfortunately, we've seen this young coaching staff kind of go through the roller coaster of the season, and a lot of times they've kind of played the game that you hope you don't see, but you expect to see in a way. And I think this is one of those games where the cloud hanging over the Eagles about being first round exits or second round exits or first game exits, or however you want to put it, as the number one seed is legitimate. Like, I do think that there is some of that, and you can't kind of overcome that overnight. And so I think that they start off conservative. That's what I'm thinking, is that the game plan is to start off conservative. Again, on paper, you should beat this team, right? So that might be the way to go. And then kind of towards the end, you see them kind of take off the reins and let Jalen Hurts, go. But what I'm more concerned with really is, you see the Giants secondary feeling themselves clearly. They held the best receiver in the league to 47 yards. AJ Brown, we've seen kind of up and down. This could be a game where he just takes over. But early on, the secondary is going to be feeling themselves, and you got to take them out of the game. And running the football is one of the ways to do that, is just kind of lull them to sleep and then, do that. So that's what we're going to see is early on in the game, you're going to see the Eagles. Hopefully you're going to see them run the football. You're going to see them establish, the quick passing game, stuff like that. So I don't think the offense is really going to come out swinging. They may, but I think, playing it safe is we might see some of that, just establishing some certain things. Where I'm kind of concerned is this off zone that Jonathan Gannon's clearly going to run. Like, I just have this bad feeling in my head that he's going to do it. And Danny Dimes, like we said, looks good and he doesn't make many mistakes. So he will pick this team apart. There's no really receivers to speak of on this Giants team. Like, let's be honest here. Like, none of those receivers should be, 100-yard receiving threats in the playoffs. But
those are the ones that are. Those are the ones that end up being the ones that just kind of sneak up and just take over the game. We saw it like random times this season, even against the Jaguars with Agnew, where they had like a ton of yards and touchdowns. That's honestly, that spoke to me, because when I was watching that Giants game and I saw those receivers playing, to me, I was just like, yeah, I shouldn't be afraid of them. But also, this, they might have a game. They might beat those guys.
It's really hard to game plan against, right? You can't just put, Darius Slay on their best receivers. They're going to move around. They're going to create options. And so I just think that, early on, the Giants, like, it might be a close game. And I just hope that, that kind of wakes them up a bit. This Eagles team, that if they play confidently, they like get creative with the blitzes. They the Vikings had 3 sacks, I think. Not like the Eagles should. They should be aiming up near 10. Like, if they really want to play the game, they should be.
That's what you're saying.
Flying after the quarterback. They should be doing all that stuff. And I just don't know if Jonathan Gannon has the gumption to do that early. I would
The
like to
Hornets?
think yes, but I still
Yeah,
have
in a playoff situation, yeah, I think.
Mhm.
I mean, in a regular season game, he's already standoffish enough, but you have to figure that bend don't break mentality is only magnified in a playoff setting. So, no, I
Mhm.
definitely hear you, Morgan.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I also feel like the Eagles do a bit better when I'm negative, so I'm doing that for the team as well.
You were one of the two that that picked the Vikings to win in week 2, right?
I believe so. Yeah,
Okay.
that was my trap game. I think. I mean,
Yeah, I messed up too. So
Okay. So you guys are responsible for the
I think
nasty
we
GM.
got the records right. I think a lot of people were talking shit about the record prediction, but I think we were spot on.
Actually, I think we actually did get the records right.
Yeah.
We could probably put something a clip about that this week. But we've been talking majority of what this game looks like from the Eagles' perspective. So we actually brought back a familiar face to talk about the Giants' perspective. Got Mikey Fresh. At first, when you came on, it actually looked like you had a war helmet on. So I was a little concerned at what I was going to put up on the screen.
That's my background. How do you like it? It's Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
It's a little cold-blooded. I'm not going to lie. It's a little cold-blooded.
What's going on, guys?
Not too
I
much,
didn't think
man.
we'd be here when we had our first. I didn't think we'd be here when we had our first meeting, huh?
Yeah. You didn't?
Yeah,
Did you have
definitely
faith?
not.
Did you have faith that they beat the Vikings?
Yeah, when we lost to them, I felt as if I didn't want to play San Fran clearly because I think they have the best team maybe in the league. But I felt like I wanted to play them again because we lost to them, and it was encouraging because we lost on the road. We had 2 turnovers in their territory, and we had a blocked punt go against us, and it still took a 61-yard bomb to beat us. So I felt fairly confident that we outplayed them slightly in that game, which I was pleasantly surprised by. So I felt pretty good last week. I felt like it would be a come down to the wire game, just like all of the Giants and Vikings games this season have been.
Did you expect that out of your background there? Expect a game like that?
Out of Dan, you know what, man? It's funny. He's really done a lot with like a receiving core. Like you guys mentioned it earlier. You know, the best receiver on the team was picked up in the middle of the year, Isaiah Hodgins, and he looks like he's a pretty good player. Our $72 million guy, Galladay's pancaking corners, but he gets 3 snaps a game, and that's all he does. So, you know, definitely impressive with Jones. Dayball's gotten the most out of him, and he's really proven a lot of critics wrong down the stretch here.
Yeah. I mean, this is like, again, there's not really, any guarantees, but this is a team that, in theory was kind of built for the playoffs, right? They could run the football. They have a great running back. They have a defense that kind of makes you earn it. And now we've kind of seen that again. Maybe not the game that, like, I figured it might be a lower scoring, but this is kind of a team that will make you pay in the playoffs. So what do you think has really been the key to ramping up towards that? And what are you seeing now that kind of in the season you had glimpses of?
They're good situation. Coaching gives them an opportunity to win. What they're really good at is in-game adjustments, which is a sign of good coaching. Their numbers in the red zone and in the second half of games are really good. And they're typically good when it matters most. Third downs, red zone offense, red zone defense. The raw statistics aren't that pretty, but when you look at those, they're keeping people out of the end zone. They're scoring when they get their opportunities. They're not turning the ball over. So they got to play that way because let's be honest, the talent disparity in this game is pretty stark. So like the Giants can't go in there and mess around. Like they have to play a clean game. They have to have guys step up. They're going to need outstanding individual efforts from several guys to get it done. Just because there's not a lot of holes on the Eagles team. From your standpoint, I know you got Hurts is banged up and Lane Johnson's banged up, but they got a week to rest now. They earned the number 1 seed, home field advantage. The only thing if I'm an Eagles fan that like people complain about is just that they kind of were like not playing their best going into the playoffs, but it could go one of two ways. You could be a little rusty, teams with the bye, or it could be really beneficial.
For the Giants to be where they are at now, which is, you were saying earlier you didn't expect them to be a playoff team the last time you were on. How much do you think that success is skill of the team, or is it Brian Daboll?
Well, I mean, Brian Daboll, in my opinion, should be the coach of the year with what he's done with the talent on the team. You can make a case for a few other guys. I'm sure you can make a case for Sirianni, Shanahan, some other guys I'm sure are deserving that I'm not mentioning. But with what he's done with the holes on the roster has been pretty incredible. And also Mike Kafka and the offensive coordinator, and then Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator. They've done a tremendous job. And we always bash on the roster because there are holes in it, but guys that are no names have stepped up to their credit when given the opportunities, whether it be from injuries or whatever the case may be. And then, I mean, really it comes down to like your best players have to ball out when it matters. Dexter Lawrence has been one of the best D tackles in the league. He's been an animal. Adoree Jackson and McKinney actually didn't play our first game against you, and they'll be back. So I'll be interested to see if Wink Martindale kind of plays that two shell safety deep and soft zone, kind of like we did early to Minnesota, because that threw them off. Because normally he's blitz heavy, man to man, and screw it, like whatever happens, happens. And that's definitely what the Vikings were expecting. But we just gave them everything underneath, which is why in the first 6 plays, Jefferson had 5 catches. I was texting my buddies like, this guy's going to catch 35 passes. So the adjustments will be interesting to see like what they're going to do. Is it going to be Barkley heavy on offense? Because your run defense is a little bit more vulnerable than your pass defense. I would think that that's the plan, but then again, I talked to several people who thought that was going to be the plan last week, and they let Daniel Dimes sling it around. So it'll be real interesting from a coaching schematic perspective, and then what they adjust off of the initial looks.
I'm curious who you think is more important if the Giants were to win, Daniel Jones or Saquon Barkley?
In this particular game, I'm going to say Jones, because again, your pass defense is like it was number 1 in the league in several categories. You're pretty loaded back there in terms of your secondary, and we don't really have good receivers that are going to be beating your corners one-on-one, right? So like, it's going to come down to Jones, and specifically like it always does with both our quarterbacks to an extent, what he does on the ground and with his legs, because those are the yards like to pick up a first down on third down that you don't really think of in the moment, but then you look up and he's got 8 carries for 65 yards, and it's like, oh wow. So I think that it's going to be Jones in this game, just because like he's gonna, even though you guys have a really good pass defense, he's going to have to make some plays with his legs at least, and a couple throws in some tight windows.
So, I mean, I was gonna say, so the focal point is Daniel Jones or Saquon on offense. The focal point for for what people are thinking about it, from the Eagles side is the Giants offense, because defensively, like like you mentioned, Adoree Jackson wasn't part of the game where the Eagles dropped 48, but then the last game of the season, the Eagles struggled to really keep a lead. Ideally, like from your standpoint, what do the Giants have to do to actually find a way to neutralize Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith, and AJ Brown at this point? Because we saw even with a banged up shoulder, like Hurts was still throwing them over 40 yards with ease. So ideally, from your standpoint, what do you think the Giants have to do to neutralize those 3 targets?
Well, I'll tell you what. If the Giants keep this game close and pull off the upset, or even if they keep it close and cover the spread, you're going to look back and you're going to say, wow, Dexter Lawrence is the best defensive tackle in football. He's an animal. It's going to be Wink Martindale creating one-on-ones with occupying Kelsey somehow and getting between Leonard Williams and Lawrence some one-on-one opportunities. And if they keep it close, it's going to be because those dudes on the defensive line just dominated and really made it difficult for Hurts. Because again, like you said, you have Goddard, you have Smith, you have Brown. Like those guys are going to create mismatches and create problems. And if you watch the Vikings game, even though we didn't have a sack, there were several times on the last play where Cousins checked it down, where he got slaughtered for that. And it was silly for him to do that, but Lawrence was pushing the offensive lineman into his lap, and he did that like 6 or 7 times throughout the game. So like his statistics, his next gen stats, as far as like the advanced metrics of beating his guys in pass rush, are off the charts. And it's going to take one of those efforts from him and a couple of those other defensive linemen between Thibodeau and Ojulari and Leonard Williams. If it's a close game where the Giants somehow pull it out, you're going to look back and be like, man, our offensive line is good, but we couldn't handle those guys.
It's crazy to think that the blueprint for both teams are very similar. I mean, it's they built in front of the trenches on defensively. Then you have Daniel Jones, who's very similar to Jalen Hurts, not as skilled as Jalen Hurts, but the same type of style. Saquon, Miles, the couple of advantages we have in Philly is we do have veteran quarterbacks. One of them being the cornerback that the Giants released in the offseason. I mean, there's some juice there, Mikey. Like when I spoke to Bradbury in the locker room, he was he didn't want to say it on record, but there's some juice there against the Giants, and he has a lot to prove still.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's gonna, as a competitor, he's gonna create probably something. But I mean, realistically, the regime that messed up our cap situation is no longer here. So it is what it is. We would have loved to keep him. we wouldn't want him to walk out the door and head down Route 95 or whatever. That wasn't ideal. But I think guys should be motivated enough. Like I've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter too. It's like, this is the Giants' revenge game for Nate Sudfeld coming in 2 years ago. I don't view it that way. I view it, if anything, this is the revenge game. Yeah, exactly. If anything, this is the revenge game from 2008 when the Giants were the #1 seed and Plaxico shot himself and you guys came into the Meadowlands and beat us. That is more of a revenge factor, if anything, from like from a franchise perspective. But I don't know. I think I'm interested to see if Hurts, like kind of what they're doing with him early on, is it going to be just kind of his normal game, like fully unleashed, like running and everything, or are they going to be cautious? I heard you guys saying earlier you think they might be a little cautious, but hey, their game plan, the way that they've won, is beat up on teams in the first half, and the Giants' strength, as I said earlier, is the adjustments they make at halftime and keeping it close in the second half and making plays situationally. So if the Giants can keep it close early on, I think that's huge. I think that's big. And then again, as the home team, as the #1 seed, as like this being the year, who knows? Eagles might start to feel a little bit of that pressure in the second half. It's just a different animal in the playoffs, like it's hard when the guys haven't experienced it. You never know how a guy's going to react. Like you just don't know.
It's 0-0 still, man. I mean, you guys won the first round, that was it, but it's still 0-0 on both ends.
I'm curious.
Yeah, I was reading. I forget what the number is.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say team 3 times. It's like they say it's always hard to beat a team 3 times. I wonder what the numbers actually indicate, though, as far as division opponents playing when they've been a sweep in the regular season.
I mean, this is kind of the Giants' MO if they are going to make a run. Like this is how they like to do it, right? So be the underdogs and take it all the way. But what I'd like to know is
I guess.
Yeah. Talking about the other side, obviously Eagles are pretty loaded at receiver, but also fantastic running the football. And the Vikings did have success doing that. Dalvin Cook, they've kind of went away from him this year, just in general, but still ran for 4 yards a carry. How susceptible is the Giants' run defense to kind of being taken out of the game early?
Just really quick before you answer that. So just to answer your last question,
if
teams that have faced the same team twice in a regular season are 14-9 in playoff matchups.
Okay, that's not
a little
great.
bit closer than what I thought.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Interesting. Thanks. So to answer your question, I think if the 5 of us put on Eagles uniforms and we're offensive linemen, they would still run the ball in the Giants' run defense. The Giants' run defense is awful, which you would think, why are they so awful with a good D line? It's because their backers are some of the worst backers in the league, and they do a good job of hiding them the best they could. They can't cover, they don't fill the holes when they should, and the run defense gets gashed against everybody. It's been one of the worst in the league, and from a strategic perspective, do the Giants kind of like sit back and allow the Eagles to run on them and sustain long drives, and then just try to make them go on these long sustained drives and try to clamp down in the red zone? Like, is that a strategy? Maybe that's kind of what they did against Minnesota. They didn't want to get beat over the top. They made him work the field. They kind of got sliced up a little bit, but made some stops when they needed to. So I don't know. Maybe it's one of those games where like the Giants kind of feed into it and like allow you guys to run on us, hoping that they continue to just run and not try to chuck it that field. So that could be one perspective. I'm also really intrigued that this is the third time these teams are facing in a relatively short time frame, because you'll really see an opportunity for Sirianni and Daboll to put their stamp on like what it's going to look like. I think the advantage goes to smarter, better coaches. And I don't know which of the coaches is better. I'm saying they've both done a fantastic job, but there is an advantage to the smart coaches in these types of scenarios when you get an opportunity to see a team, and you maybe are expecting one game plan, but then they do something different. Then like, how quickly can you change course? How quickly can you change course if what you intended to do maybe is not working because the other team's doing something completely different? So I think the good teams and the good coaches make the adjustments on the fly, and then like look at the Chargers, look at some other teams, great first half numbers but poor second half numbers, and it's indicative of poor coaching.
Would you say that if the Giants basically make this season series, including the postseason, a 2-1, and they take this game, if the Giants do that, would you then say that this has more to do with Daboll? If the Eagles sweep and go 3-0, clearly they're the just out talented, overpowered team. So at that point, the Giants were to take this one, I would kind of put their success on Daboll versus the talent of the team. I do believe that the Eagles on paper are the better team at pretty much every position except running back. But like what you're saying though is now Daboll, like, he's a very smart coach, and honestly, what you were saying about earlier, him probably being a coach of the year candidate, it's the reason why the Giants are in this situation right now, and he's dangerous, like you were saying, going into the third game.
I mean, absolutely. I think that he's gonna have a big part of it, and it's I mean, as far as if the Eagles win, we'll probably look back and say, yeah, they were the better team. Like, they were more talented. It's not going to be like Nick Sirianni fooled them, I mean, maybe, who knows? Like, that's the thing. Like, we got to kind of see how it plays out. But I think you're right about that. The narrative will be the Eagles are more talented. They're just better.
Right.
But also, I think there's some Giants players that in the second half of the year, like, you can only be a no name for so long. Like, if you keep performing well time after time, like, eventually maybe you're just a good player and nobody knew it, right? Like when Tom Brady won his Super Bowl in 2001, he wasn't Tom Brady yet. Nobody knew at the time. He was a no name quarterback, right? And then looking back, it's like, wow, like they had some dudes. Same thing with the Giants 2007 team. Like, in the moment, like, you didn't really know like some of those players were, but then like looking back a few years later, you're like, oh wow, like they had some talent. So like, is that the case with Daniel Jones? Is that the case with Isaiah Hodgins? Like, he looks like a player. Like, it's one thing to like do it with smoke and mirrors a little bit, but like some of these guys, I think we got to give a little bit more credit to. Like, next season, we'll probably see some it'll validate some of these guys potentially if they continue to have success, and we'll look back and say, wow, remember Isaiah Hodgins the Bills tried to sneak him on the practice squad, but the Giants claimed him from waivers because Shane and Daboll were there and they knew he was good. Like, I think some of these guys might end up just being decent players, just flourishing with the opportunity and kind of kickstarting their careers.
I feel like
It's always funny that the Giants kind of have that player, like they have. Like
I was gonna say that's a common thing with them because Manningham, Victor Cruz, like it's a recurring thing with the Giants. They always pick up these guys who are like literally no name guys.
Or even down to running backs. Like, I don't remember Ahmad Bradshaw until he was a Giant.
What was it? Brendan Jacobs?
Yeah, Bradshaw I think was a 7th round pick out of Marshall. Jacobs may have been a 3rd round pick. But yeah, I mean, right? Like David Tyree, right? Like he kind of came out
Yeah.
of nowhere.
Until that
Um,
catch, man, who was David Tyree?
Yeah, but I mean, he didn't go out and have a great career though. But like some of those guys on that team that were young, like ended up being like pretty decent players, like Steve Smith, until he had some injuries. Like he was a rookie that year, and then he
Mhm.
ended. I think he has the Giants single season record in receptions with 109 a few years later, if I'm not mistaken. But so that's Victor Cruz that year came out of nowhere and was a nobody, but had a pretty decent career considering.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Some of these guys are going to upgrade the roster in the offseason, and they're going to be depth pieces and fringe roster guys because that's what they are. They've just done a great job of coaching them up and scheming them up. But it'll be interesting to see which ones actually stick. And I think Hodgins is one that'll stick for sure.
And this game is really a full circle kind of game because it's two topics that really two names have come up continuously on the podcast tonight is Brian Daboll and Nick Sirianni, and I feel like not a lot of people know like Brian Daboll is the guy that introduced Nick Sirianni to Jalen Hurts back when before Hurts was drafted, and he actually told Sirianni, hey, like this guy's a student in the game, second and third. Brian Daboll also coached Jalen Hurts. Then you have Daboll actually being a mentor of Nick Sirianni. When Nick Sirianni was actually presented as Eagles coach, he thanked Brian Daboll. So it's like this game has the makes him feel like a phenomenal movie because literally on every end. I mean, you have Saquon and Miles, great friends, Penn State. Like this, I don't know. Like this game it has the makes of being a phenomenal playoff game. But it's also kind of one of those games like, is it really going to be a great game, or is it going to be one of those games where it's kind of like the one seed overdoes it, or the lower seed upsets the one seed, and it's, I don't know. It could go in so many directions, but I think the an overlooked storyline is the Daboll Nick Sirianni connection, that relationship, being the mentor of the Eagles head coach, where now you guys are facing in the playoffs, and these two know each other very well. Daboll knows Jalen Hurts very well. It's like it's just a phenomenal aspect to look at it.
I knew that Daboll was with Hurts at Alabama. I did not know that he recommended Hurts or whatever you just said to Sirianni. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, he introduced Hurts back in before Jalen was drafted when Sirianni was still with the Colts. He introduced Hurts to Sirianni, and then they had a conversation about him. So that was something I think came up in Athletic a while ago.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, yeah, man. I mean, they you got to give Hurts credit, dude. Like his development, we talked about it last time, like where he's come from. I mean, a lot of this league too is I've become like more of a nerd this year, like looking up at advanced metrics and advanced stats. I argue with some of my friends that are fans of other teams and quarterbacks, and I'm like, dude, like your guy can't play that well. Like he's got studs.
Your guy's trash.
Yeah. So, and then it's like in this age of instant gratification, like it's really difficult because these billionaire owners are impatient, and you draft a quarterback high, and all of the great young quarterbacks have done us a disservice because now guys don't get a chance anymore to develop. Like Jones was literally about to be thrown out. Like Eli took him 4 years. Like it used to take guys some time. It's the right situation. Coaching is everything. Like look at the Giants last year, this year. Like it's so crazy how the circumstance and where you land, unless you're a generational type of a talent like an Andrew Luck. He went to the Colts were so dysfunctional that they didn't get an offensive line good enough, and he got beat up so bad he had to retire early. But like he was so good that he like took that garbage team after they were horrible the year before and like dragged them to the playoffs. Like there's only a few of those guys that come around that are going to be great no matter what, and everybody else it's like circumstance. So like Patrick Mahomes, he stepped onto the field in his first year as a starter, and look what he's done. And it's like now every time a young quarterback comes in, if they're not looking like Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert, like it's like, let's get rid of them. And really it's like, well, do you have the infrastructure around them? Do you have anything like, do you have good coaching around them? Do you have good players? Do you have an offensive line? Like so that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see moving forward what the Giants do for Jones specifically in that category. But I mean, it can't get any worse. So they got to go up from here, right? They got to shore up the interior offensive line, get some more weapons. But like I said
Do you
earlier,
think
the
he's the
guys that
guy?
they have have stepped up.
You think he gets
I do
extended in
now.
off season?
100%. Yeah, I used to think last year I always was a defender a little bit just because I saw how shitty the team was around him, and it's like, man, nobody would succeed here. Like, come on. And then last year I was like, I don't know, maybe it's time. And I kept going back and forth. It was like a week to week thing. And then this year, in the beginning of the year, I was joking with my friends. I was like, we're gonna see Tyrod Taylor by week 4 if we're not doing anything on offense. And slowly they brought him along because really earlier in the year it was like heavy Barkley and like protect Daniel Jones. Like they were like, I was like watching these game plans and I was like, they don't trust their quarterback. Like they're not letting him do anything. And
Yeah.
realistically, it was brilliant by Dayball at the time because they couldn't block. They didn't have receivers. These guys that they some of the receivers weren't even on the team at that point in time. So if he were to try to throw it 30, 40 times with Jones like he's done in the last month, it would have been a disaster. So Dayball was brilliant, bringing him along, building his confidence. I don't know if you guys saw the story, but in preseason, all the videos on Twitter, everyone's like, Daniel Jones sucks. Look at these. He's like throwing picks in camp and stuff. Brian Dayball wanted to test his quarterback's mental toughness. So he intentionally told the defense the plays they were running to sabotage Jones and make him look bad in preseason. And he specifically set up Tyrod Taylor for success. He wanted to see how Daniel Jones would mentally handle him sucking and the backup coming in and lighting it up. And it was staged. And I saw that story in the last few weeks and I was like, wow, like first off, that's fucked up. That's kind of harsh, but, so I think like there's a lot of things that, that Jones has very similar to Eli from an intangible standpoint in terms of the leadership. The guys on the team like him, his toughness, his work ethic. He says the right things at the podium. Like it's never about him. It's always about the team when they succeed. And whenever they don't succeed, it's always on me. I got to do better. So he has that knack for New York where nothing's going to affect him. And he has all of the right leadership type of qualities. The question was always just, is he going to keep turning the ball over, and is he going to be able to make the throws when he needs to? And this year he hasn't turned the ball over, and he has made a lot of throws when he's needed to. So I think, yeah, they're going to sign him. And I don't know what the deal is going to look like whatever, but like 100%, like there's no other alternative that's on the market or in the draft that you're going to get that's going to be better. And that was kind of the case even when I wasn't completely sold on him. But now it's like solidified, like, yeah, he can be the guy you build around him. At Duke, he played with inferior talent around him. He had no good players around him at Duke. And now he's showing that he can do that again with the Giants. So I just want to see the guy with some weapons.
Well, like that's interesting you mentioned that. And we were talking about kind of all these, quarterbacks that kind of make that leap. And usually it goes hand in hand with that team getting a receiver, a number one receiver. You saw that with when the Bills got Stephon Diggs, stuff like that. It's just so common, right? You saw that with even Carson Wentz getting Alshon Jeffrey, and the Giants haven't really done that, but it almost seems like it's to their benefit. Like they've no receivers over 1,000 yards. Again, that's not the be all end all, but they've really been able to spread the ball around. And how much do you think that kind of plays into what they want to do, and how beneficial is that to their chance of success? It's kind of forced Daniel Jones to spread the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think defense has ever come into a game plan against the Giants really worrying about their receivers. Maybe now a little bit with Hodgins, and maybe a little bit with Slayton just because he's fast. You don't want to get beat deep, but like you come into the game against the Giants wanting to prevent Barkley from having a big game and don't let Jones run around. So those are the things you look at when we're game planning against them. So I guess I don't know. Is it easier as a quarterback when you don't have to force feed the ball to one player? Maybe there's something to say about Tyreek Hill leaving, and Patrick Mahomes said that he's gotten to be a better quarterback because of that. Now, instead of just dropping back and throwing it to Tyreek Hill, he's like actually going through his progressions like he should. That's what he said. So maybe there's something to that with his development, but I don't know if you're used to, driving a Honda Accord for 3 or 4 years and then all of a sudden you get a Rolls Royce, like it's got to be pretty sweet. So I'm looking forward to the Rolls Royce.
I look back at the 2019 NFL draft while you were giving that answer, And just very quickly, there was another quarterback that Daniel Jones will not be playing on Saturday, taking that draft, Gardner Minshew. Do you
Oh yeah.
believe that the Giants would be in the same position with Gardner Minshew?
Interesting.
You know what? He hasn't played a lot in the last few years, but I like every time he's played, like he's looked pretty, like he's got a little moxie, a little something to him. I think, I think that like, I think that there are like 4 or 5 quarterbacks on the planet that can succeed and overcome a talent deficiency around them, and then I think there's everybody else who needs support, and I think like everybody else from number 6 on the list to number 19. Honestly, like there's not that much of a difference between some of these guys, and I think a lot of it is what's around you and the situation you're in. So I don't know. I don't know if Minshew's he's mobile, but I don't think he's as fast as Jones. And I think a lot of the Giants' success has had to do with Jones's running. So I don't think there's a lot of quarterbacks that if they switch with Jones, they'd be in a better off situation just because of the way that he plays too. So you got to give him credit. Like he's done a lot with them. But Minshew might be a good starter somewhere. Who knows? Maybe potentially. I don't know what his contract is, but
He's a free man at the end of the season.
Right.
So we're reaching the 10-minute mark, and I think this segment is Eric's favorite part of the show. Predictions.
Yeah, it's when I get to tell you guys my numbers and then bail. No, no. I might as well let's kick it off real quick.
Let's do it.
I got 24-17. I'm taking like the most basic score, but I think it's because originally I've hovered around 29-22. We've had some crazy blowout number on the very first game, but this is the third game and it gets to be tighter. And these are division opponents. Dable's no dum, neither is Sirianni. I think there will be scoring plenty, actually. So 24-17, it might be actually setting the minimum, but I think we can work with the minimum here. I think both defenses know each other enough to kind of be stubborn, and that's even with the Giants against Philadelphia. Philadelphia is not a team that won't turn the ball over, so they're prone to beating themselves. I'm trying to account for all these situations that could happen as well in the prediction. So
sure.
Final score, Philadelphia
It's
Eagles,
gonna be cold.
24-17.
It's gonna be chilly.
Yeah, it will be. It will be. So it'll be a good night to run the ball, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a good night to run the ball, but it definitely would be a good night to run the ball. For me, I have it kind of close. I'm thinking right around 27-17. I think that in more ideal weather conditions, you might see Philadelphia kind of pop off a little bit more. And I think that you can even argue that it's a 2-possession final score, but I think the game you could argue may at times feel a little bit closer to that, especially at the end. I wouldn't be surprised if we see another little bit of a run from New York in a different way than obviously when they last met, but Philadelphia does have that habit of kind of letting teams back into it, and the Giants have proved that they are resilient this year. So I think this is going to be a fun game, especially, in the end for Philadelphia fans. I do think the Eagles will prevail, but 27-17 is what I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm. Should I give you the honors, Mike? Or you want me to go next?
You got it.
All right. So my prediction is going to be the exact same score as the Giants had last week, just inverse. I think it's going to be 31-24 Eagles. There's 2 things. Obviously, it's great to run the ball in the cold, and that's because it sucks to tackle a dude that's as big as a running back in cold weather. And the Eagles have a guy like that at receiver in A.J. Brown. And I think as soon as they figure out that Adoree Jackson is no match for A.J. Brown physically, and they start exploiting that matchup, the Eagles will have a good time. Now, I still think they're going to have to march down the field, but I think you're just going to see time and time again. You're going to see that matchup. You're going to see Dallas Goedert. Like, these are just big physical dudes. The other thing that happens in cold weather is the fast dudes separate themselves. is if you are quick and you can move in cold weather, you're going to separate yourself. So Devontae Smith's going to have one of those games where he's just picking up reception after reception. I think once they figure that out, the Eagles, will have a good time. But again, I think you can't count this Giants team out. That's why it's still going to be a close game. I think the Eagles may get up a bit early, and I think they have to win. You don't want to let the Giants team hang around. They're feisty. They'll make you earn it. So I think the Eagles maybe get out to a bit of a lead. The Giants give them a scare towards the end. But ultimately, what I think it comes down to is that the Eagles get more than 3 sacks against the Giants, and that's what's going to come down to is you have one of those timely Brandon Graham, Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Javon Hargrave sacks, and that kind of ends the Giants' hopes.
Okay, you ready, Mike?
Nice. Yeah. I don't think the cold will be like this crazy detriment. I think if there was some wind, maybe, but I think both teams will be able to handle that. As far as it goes, if the Giants weren't involved in this game, I had my questions on the Eagles, the way that they kind of finished the year, on what they'd be able to accomplish in the playoffs. I saw some stat that was pretty interesting. The last undefeated team of the regular season, statistically, I don't know if it's they haven't been to a Super Bowl or haven't won a Super Bowl. Usually you look back at those teams that are the last undefeated teams. It's been a long time, and more often than not, you see these first round bye teams. It's what's rest versus rust. Last year, the Titans and the Packers were the 1 seeds. They both lost. So I had my questions on Philadelphia coming into the playoffs before I knew they were playing the Giants. And I'm not going to pick against the Giants. So with that said, I'm going to say you're going to look at a 27-24 Giants in this one. And like I said, it's going to have to be a clean game. You're going to have some really good individual performances, specifically on that defensive line.
It's kind of like what I say about my Flyers. They have to play a perfect game. They cannot afford to play a imperfect game. So, yeah. No, I agree. If it's going to be 27-24 Giants, in your prediction, it's going to have to be a clean game. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So beginning of the season, when the Giants were hot, I said I mistakenly said on this Eagles podcast, that I think the Eagles would lose to the Giants at some point. The first loss would come against the Giants. But I don't think that's happening on Saturday night. I said one thing all season long. If the NFC has to go through Philly and has to go through the link, nobody's beating Philly. And it's not even a biased thing. It's just that environment compared to any other environment is second to none. It's literally opposing teams just falling into a quicksand. It's a pit of death.
It's going to be fun, man. It's going to be a great environment.
It's going to be wild. And another thing that you got to also count on is the Giants haven't won in Philadelphia since 2013. Not only that, Jalen Hurts has actually gotten 3 weeks of rest. On top of that, the last time the Eagles actually scored 30-plus points and won this season was against the Giants, where they won 48-22 when Jalen Hurts was balling out. And I think the Eagles have been dragging themselves through the mud ever since the Bears game.
Yep.
They've been struggling. They've been going through it. And I think this is the game where it's kind of like, hey, guys, we're the fucking Eagles. We're the number 1 seed. I feel like it's literally that game where they flare up. They flex and they do their thing, because it's something about Jalen and the way he approaches the game that literally just it connects with every single member of this team, and they all have that same poise and that same energy. And then you have Hassan Reddick on the other side. You have Fletcher Cox. You have Javon Hargrave. You have Brandon Graham. You have Josh Sweat. You have all these guys just going off, almost beat the sack record. It's hard to say that a team that needed rest is going to be rusty going into hosting their first playoff game, especially after getting blown out last year against the Bucs. So with all that theatrics,
1,000-0. That's what Brian's prediction.
1,000-0.
75-3.
Yeah.
I'm actually going 30-plus. I'm going 35-24. I think Philly gets a big first half lead because they haven't done that in a while. I think they go back to putting their foot on people's necks and just burying them deep in the first half. I think we go to that. I think Giants make a little run in the second half, but all in all, one thing that a lot of people forgot is Philly knows how to close out teams. They did early on. They're not, they're not foolish enough to not know how to play their game. And I think Sirianni's he's not going to hold back.
Gotta put the foot to the neck and close them out.
Yeah, so it's all about. But to close this out, Mikey, we appreciate you big time, dude. Like you are our Giants guy going forward.
Fun as hell, man. It's fun as hell. I love doing this. So good luck. Hopefully it's a good game. Hopefully it's a clean game. Hopefully no injuries. Hopefully no bad officiating. Hopefully it's all good.
Oh, and that's another stat. Hold on. The officiating team that's actually officiating the game, the Eagles are 13-1.
I know. I saw it was correct. That was corrected though. I think is actually like 13-4 or something like that.
Still good record,
but,
right?
Yeah, I was looking at some of the stats.
You reminded me that after that one call the Vikings got, I was praying. I was like, they better not win this game because that if they won after that,
was that the roughing the passer call? Was it that game?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure.
Oh, the roughing one.
Oh yeah, so they got a couple.
Yeah, I mean,
but
the roughing one was bad. My friends laughed. Yeah, it's tough. It's today's NFL. You want to protect the quarterbacks. You got to just. It is what it is, unfortunately. My friends always make fun of me. They're like, you always complain about the refs. Because I'm like, I'll have somebody text me, like, yo, Thibodeau's getting held on every play. And like on a Vikings touchdown at the end of the first half, I'm like, yo, he's getting held. It's like, what the hell?
Well, it's gonna be a hell of a game Saturday night. Again, Mikey, we do appreciate you coming on. Pretty sure next season we'll have you on as well. Good luck to you guys. Definitely. I feel like it's gonna be a hell of an entertaining game, honestly.
Yeah. Hey, I'm just happy I'm not doing my 15th mock draft of the offseason already at this point. So,
I think that's a positive. Counts for all of us.
Yeah. All right, guys. Have a good one.
You too.
Have a good one, Mikey.
Take care, man.
All right, awesome. So that was Mikey Fresh covering the Giants. And yeah, I mean, we're all unanimously saying that the Eagles are going to win this game, which is great. A lot of us have it as a close game. Several of us, maybe one of us, has it as a blowout game a bit. But yeah, I'm stoked to see what's going to happen. And I'm hoping that next week's podcast is not the last podcast of the season. So let's keep that going.
Right, that's fair. Yeah. No, honestly, there is a part of me that does feel very comfortable about this game, and I hate it because maybe that is everything else saying, oh, you're feeling too comfortable. Oh, the referees, they're 13-4 in your favor. And it's like all these really good statistics and good feelings. Maybe it's just not maybe am I getting my own head? Probably. I don't know. But
no, I got to fight that same comfort every day. But it's kind of
okay. It's not just me then. All right.
But dude, it's the one. Like, they're the 1 seed. Like you actually think about it, like they actually went through a lot of adversity this season. They lost their star quarterback. They were in close games that they shouldn't have been with the Texans, the Colts, the Bears. They lost to the Cowboys that second time around when they needed to clinch. Washington. Like this team, Washington as well. Like this team is built on adversity this season, as much as people want to hold it against them. And on top of that, they are extremely overlooked for the 1 seed once again. Mm-hmm. To repeat 2017, nobody's talking about Philly. Everybody's talking about the 49ers. Mm-hmm. That's all that people are talking about. It's the 49ers versus who in the Super Bowl?
They're talking about 49ers and Brock Purdy over the Eagles and the probable MVP. I mean, come on.
It's politics at the end of the day. But all I do know is this is Flipping the Birds, and we have the Eagles winning this game, and I'm stoked to definitely
playoff football, baby.
Yes, this is amazing. I love this. That does not get better than this.
No, Eagles Giants playoffs. Get some Pizza Hut. Done deal. Sounds like a plan.
I wish there was a freaking Pizza Hut around me.
I wish I had a pizza.
I mean, I would like rep Pizza Hut. I wouldn't eat the Pizza Hut, but I would like rep it personally.
They have pretty good wings. I'm not gonna lie though. They do. They have pretty good wings.
Honestly, we're talking like 2 decades since I've eaten at a Pizza Hut. Like
Eric does look like Jason Kelce right now.
Honestly, I wish I had a pizza for each time someone called me Jason Kelce.
Then
I would become Jason Kelce.
Hey, can we honor this? So we are in the playoffs, and Greg Ward has not touched the field at all.
Thank you.
He is not on the
active roster. Plenty of times where he should have. There's plenty of times where he should have touched the field. Like, I don't know, in case anybody else wanted to throw the ball one time, Jalen Hurts. Do you think Gardner Minshew needed to throw the ball every time? No. No,
I mean, if there was a time to have Greg Ward throw the ball, it probably was when Minshew was in.
Yeah. And then they didn't. I didn't understand it either, Zach.
Oh well.
He's Jesus Christ.
The pork is officially off the table.
The pork is off the table until next
another
season, boys.
successful year in the book for me, right there.
Yeah, you're 1-0. It's another successful year.
Until next year, my dear.
He's undefeated, man.
But shame you guys said regular season because there's still a chance. But you guys said regular season, so
wait till my Travis Fulgham bet of 2024.
I'm so mad I have a Travis Fulgham jersey in my closet.
Oh, did you win it?
I did. I won that. I didn't pay for it.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's awesome.
I got a Jeremy Lin Knicks jersey once too. Like, there's some things that you can't. Like, you win things that just like you have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I got a Nerlens Noel jersey.
I won.
He was traded the same
I got an autographed Nerlens Noel jersey. I
won,
no idea
I won
what to do with
an
it.
NFL hat. I don't like an NFL.
I think I remember you telling me about that.
The league,
like an actual NFL.
Yeah, just like a big Roger Goodell guy.
Yeah, you Roger Goodell simp you. Look at that.
They working the officiating cap.
Like literally, yeah, exactly. I really like the decisions the league makes.
It's a very reputable league.
Yeah,
they have their players' interests at heart. You can really tell.
It's a nice hat. The problem is it's a nice hat. It's nice and warm. It's like the insulated one. It's like, all right. I wore it to practice a couple times. I'm not allowed to wear team gear.
Be careful. You wear it to practice. You're going to be doing one of these.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Suspend our quarterback or something like that for some text he was sending. I don't know. Whatever it is. Go Roger. He's my guy.
Go Roger, go Birds.
Did anybody see that video of Roger getting cursed out by the fan, by the way?
Yeah.
No, what? Roger
responded. It was not as cool as Howie Roseman's response.
I don't know what the hell Roger Roseman was doing.
But it was not as cool. Like, I did not leave feeling about Goodell as I did about Howie Roseman. Like, Howie Roseman improved how I felt about him after that video. But
Goodell's
I like the Brandon Graham.
What is this?
It was very much like that that meme of that kid with the scrunched face, that and honestly, almost like not even as beloved as that Travis Konechny, Eric. You know the one I'm talking about? That photo?
Oh yeah, when he does the teeth back at him,
that. Like from Konechny, he's endearing, but from Goodell, it's just it's nah, we're good.
You guys saw the Brandon Graham video though with the Giants fans, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that ass.
Oh, they're yelling at him as he's coming out of the tunnel, and they're like, "You guys really? The Colts," and he's like, "Well, we about to beat that ass, baby."
He was laughing like, "Ha, you beat us? Yeah. We better beat that ass."
so Brandon Graham, man, so Brandon Graham.
I love it. I love it.
Oh God! All right, guys. Well, until next week. This is Flipping the Birds. Brian Cameron, Eric Reed, Zach Chavalella, Morgan Burkett, and we'll see you guys next Tuesday.
Next week.
Go Birds!
Go Birds.
Yes,
Go Birds.